A young girl's body was pierced with countless iron nails, as though bound by a cruel curse. Legend has it that if someone can remove all the nails, she will regain her human form. However, without removing the nails, she suffers unbearable pain and is on the brink of death. Yet with each nail pulled, her body inches closer to a monstrous transformation. Just when she thought she would spend her entire life shackled by this curse, a man appeared by her side and, without hesitation, began pulling out the nails. This man was a mental patient who had been under treatment for years with no improvement, his symptoms recurring constantly. Due to his unique brain structure, he was unexpectedly chosen as a vessel by a mysterious spirit. Although the spirit could not cure his condition directly, in a world overrun by spirits where nights were fraught with danger, they developed a symbiotic relationship. The spirit would protect him in crucial moments. After all, in these strange, revived nights, no one could tell if the knock on the door came from a lost little girl or a malevolent ghost seeking souls. On their first night together, the spirit displayed extraordinary combat skills, not only saving the man's life but also drawing the attention of the Exorcism Bureau. The Exorcism Bureau had already detected unusual activity in the area, yet they never expected to find such a powerful wild cultivator hidden here. Chen Zhua, the mentally unstable man, lived in a psychiatric ward, plagued by episodes and isolated from the world. Just as he was adjusting to his partnership with the spirit, a strange, haunting song echoed through the ward, shattering the silence. The spirit immediately sensed an approaching dark presence. However, Chen Zhuo and another patient innocently thought someone was practicing singing at midnight, excitedly climbing up to the window to investigate. They couldn't help but remark that the new girl did look unique, though singing in the middle of the night was a bit disturbing. As the two patients whispered by the window, little did they know that the girl was actually a vengeful ghost from the underworld, lurking ominously nearby. In the dead of night, the vengeful ghost appeared, searching for prey, and her targets were the two unsuspecting fools in front of her. Just as the ghost prepared to strike, the spirit urgently shouted, "Chen Zhua, get out of the way." The words had barely left his mouth when the tightly locked door was effortlessly phased through by the ghost. With one swift leap, she landed on Chen Zhua's bed, dark water stains symbolizing her drowned ghost identity dripping eerily from her body. However, Chen Zhua glared at her with indignation, clearly annoyed. "Tomorrow is my cleaning day. How am I supposed to clean up this mess with black water everywhere?" He grabbed a slipper by his bedside and relentlessly smacked the ghost without hesitation. Finally, he kicked her out the door, saying coldly, "If you're here, learn the rules. Don't cause trouble." The ghost, thoroughly beaten and disoriented, shakily rose to her feet, with even more dark water dripping down, looking utterly defeated. To her surprise, Chen Zhua swung at her again, smacking her so fiercely her spirit nearly dispersed. Bewildered, the ghost couldn't understand how a mere mortal had managed to leave her in such a pitiful state. Meanwhile, the exorcism officers watching from the surveillance room were stunned. Someone had actually subdued a ghost with just a slipper. Chief Zhou Aiguo was so moved he teared up, saying, "I never thought I'd live to see such a wild cultivator. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." The following morning, the chief personally led a team to visit the ward, eager to meet this talent. At that moment, Chen Zhuo was still fast asleep, his bedpost hung with various clothes drying in the room, a comical sight. The head doctor, looking exasperated, informed the chief, "He's still a severely ill patient. Control ghosts? He doesn't even know who he is." The chief looked at Chen Zhua, secretly amused. This cultivator was indeed an impressive character, truly worthy of admiration. "Did you have any contact with that girl last night?" The two exorcism officers asked, their faces filled with doubt, speculating that Chen Zhua might have a dual personality. But before Zhang Yuyu could ask further, Chen Zhua's gaze suddenly fixed on her chest, staring intently, as if entranced. It turned out that the spirit residing within Chen Zhua had sensed an imbalance in this girl's aura, especially the faint trace of yin energy around her chest, possibly a long-term effect of exposure to such energy. However, Chen Zhua could barely grasp such complexities. In his simplified understanding, he merely noticed two little balls on her chest. He even loudly insisted on checking it out, scaring the two girls into a frenzy of screams. Seeing this, the head doctor had to step in, personally dragging him back and apologizing profusely to the officers, explaining, "Chen Zhua's condition is indeed quite serious, please bear with us." Chief Zhou Aiguo watched this scene, his once burning expectations instantly extinguished, realizing that his so-called extraordinary talent might be slipping through his fingers. But he couldn't quite let it go and persistently questioned the doctor about whether Chen Zhua had any other special qualities. The head doctor shook his head, helplessly laughing. "If you want special qualities, well, he often claims to be an alien and frequently uses his slipper to contact headquarters. though it's just a habit left over from watching an alien movie last month. During lunch, Zhang Yuyu was ready to give up on recruiting him, but Chief Zhou persisted, convinced that Chen Zhua's skills from the previous night were remarkable. If they were to leave, Chen Zhua had to come along. Meanwhile, the spirit also came to a realization: this guy was indeed genuinely mentally unstable. But treating his condition had to wait. The urgent priority was to keep him alive. After all, the red-clothed vengeful ghost, frustrated by last night's failure, was bound to return tonight. To deal with her, the Jizo exorcism talisman was undoubtedly the best tool. However, as soon as the talisman paper appeared, Chen Zhuo was so shocked that he practically jumped out of his skin, entirely intimidated by this unexpected artifact. Angrily, he crumpled the talisman paper into a ball and tossed it, which landed directly in the chief's soup bowl, creating a moment of awkward silence. The two officers exchanged helpless glances, finally understanding why this talent couldn't simply be let out of the psychiatric hospital. Protecting the citizens was their duty, and with the vengeful ghost likely to return at any moment, they had no choice but to stay on guard here. As night fell, just as expected, the red-clad vengeful ghost appeared, her eerie aura spreading swiftly. Thankfully, the ward had been set up with a sunlight array, forcing the ghost to retreat step by step, her figure trembling under the intense light, seemingly on the brink of being reduced to ashes. However, unexpectedly, another helper appeared, a formidable second-rank male ghost who consistently ranked in the top 10 of the ghost rankings. As soon as the male ghost showed up, he exhaled a cloud of pitch-black filth, instantly engulfing the rooftop spotlight, plunging the surroundings into darkness and giving the red-clad ghost a chance to catch her breath. Using the cover of darkness, she and the male ghost rushed up to the second floor, easily breaking through the sunlight array's defense. Chief Zhou was face turned pale, anxiety filling his heart. He had initially hoped to let Chen Zhua take this chance to earn credit, hoping it would justify recruiting him into the bureau, but now he only wished Chen Zhua would stay safe. Inside the ward, Chen Zhua sat cross-legged, an unusual resolve flickering in his eyes, appearing completely unlike his usual self. However, when the ghosts broke down the door, both spirits staring at him intensely, Chen Zhua's composure crumbled entirely. He immediately lifted his foot, hopping to the doorway and glancing around as if waiting for some alien backup. After a moment with no signs of help, he resorted to picking up a slipper and contacting headquarters. He even started cursing at the red-clad ghost. "It must be you again, ruining my big plans." This outburst startled the red-clad ghost, who reflexively shivered and hid behind the male ghost. The spirit immediately urged Chen Zhuo to stay calm, as this male ghost was a formidable second-rank presence, far beyond what ordinary means could handle. Waves of pitch-black resentment surged forward, blocking any chance of escape for Chen Zhuo. Though Chen Zhuo showed no fear, the spirit couldn't afford to stand idle, ready to intervene at any moment. Meanwhile, the exorcism officers arrived at the scene, fully prepared to provide support. However, their weapons proved almost useless against the male ghost, and they were forced to retreat by the black water it sprayed at them. Even their high-strength composite shields were nearly corroded into uselessness under the relentless assault of resentment energy. Locked in fierce combat with the powerful second-rank male ghost, it was clear the exorcism officers were entirely outmatched. As the situation grew increasingly dire, everyone's hopes once again fell upon Chen Zhuo. However, Chen Zhuo now looked completely dejected, as if all hope was lost. In the midst of the chaos, his slipper had unfortunately fallen in battle, meaning his only tool for contacting headquarters was destroyed. For a moment, Chen Zhuo felt as though his world had collapsed, his spirit utterly crushed. But soon, he gathered himself, transforming all his grief into anger, determinedly thinking, "This is all those two's fault, they won't get away with this." Seeing its host finally awakened, the spirit didn't hesitate to channel all its power into him. With a mighty diamond fist, Chen Zhuo landed a fierce blow, sending the second-rank male ghost flying 10 meters away. Before the ghost could even react, Chen Zhuo's elephant kick followed up, pummeling the male ghost into total disorientation. Just as the male ghost lay struggling on the ground, a Jizo exorcism talisman infused with blazing sunlight energy appeared before him, causing him to immediately kneel and beg for mercy. However, it was already too late. The scorching golden light engulfed him, burning the male ghost completely into dust, leaving no trace behind. Witnessing this, the red-clad female ghost trembled in terror, curling up in the corner, too afraid even to meet Chen Zhuo's gaze. In the surveillance room, Chief Zhou watched in utter shock, never having imagined that Chen Zhuo possessed such formidable power. His resolve to recruit Chen Zhuo solidified, and early the next morning, he sought out the head doctor once again, this time determined to bring Chen Zhuo along at any cost. However, the head doctor appeared hesitant, as protecting the patients remained his primary duty. The incident from the previous night left him uneasy, After all, mental patients often behaved unpredictably, and involving them in exorcism missions could lead to unforeseen risks. Yet, when the head doctor looked out the window, he was surprised to see the patients not only unafraid but cheering at the prospect of moving to a new ward. The black corrosion marks on their bodies, left by the ghost's tainted water, served as a stark reminder of the night's events. The head doctor felt a mix of emotions, reluctant to abandon his patients despite the complications. Seeing the doctor's stubbornness, Joe Igwa's frustration boiled over, leading him to tearfully recount his struggles, his sorrowful display causing the doctor to frown. Just as the doctor was about to relent, another officer rushed in with urgent news. "Chief, something might happen in the Southern District. The resentment detected last night indicated that the murderous little girl might strike again tonight, and another household could be in grave danger." Hearing this, Joe Igwa understood the urgency. Chinjua's deployment was now inevitable. When Joe Igwa tried earnestly inviting Chinjua to join the exorcism bureau, he finally understood what the head doctor meant by troublesome. This guy was completely uncontrollable. As the sun set, everyone exhausted their efforts, yet still failed to convince Chinjua. If persuasion didn't work, it was time to get tough. At Joe Igwa's command, the officers sprang into action, tying up Chinjua and hauling him to the Southern District's crime scene. However, expecting cooperation from Chinjua in such a state was clearly unrealistic. As everyone pondered a solution, Joe Igwa had a sudden idea. Since Chinjua was so fixated on the alien narrative, why not play along? Putting on a serious expression, he solemnly declared, "You're Agent 01, right? I am your alien companion, Agent 07. With an expression as earnest as if he were about to take an oath, his words caught Chinjua's attention, and for the first time, he stopped struggling, a look of puzzled excitement in his eyes. After all, this was his first response from headquarters. Although thrilled, Chinjua wasn't naive. He wouldn't believe just anyone claiming to be Agent 07. He glared at Joe Igwa coldly. "If you're really from headquarters, give me the code." "The code is Bonbo Bababo Bonbon," Chinjua said with utmost seriousness, leaving Joe Igwa completely baffled, unable to make sense of it. Joe Igwa had heard before that Chinjua's codes were always bizarre and unpredictable, each one different, making them impossible to guess. With no other choice, Joe Igwa took a gamble, forcing a laugh. "Ha! A salute to the brave agent." Internally, Joe Igwa was tense, worried that a wrong answer might set Chinjua off again. Surprisingly, whether by coincidence or Chinjua's cooperation, the code seemed to connect. Joe Igwa breathed a sigh of relief, feeling hopeful that the ghost-catching mission could proceed smoothly. Facing Joe Igwa's instructions, Agent 01 Chinjua wore a solemn expression, pledging unwavering obedience to the mission. Just then, the detection equipment suddenly picked up a strong wave of energy, with the source located in the hallway outside. Everyone was filled with dread, stepping back nervously, but Chinjua remained completely unfazed, casually playing with a music box. He even lay sprawled out on the floor, mimicking the pose of a deceased person. As he was having fun, a sense of danger filled the air, and the spirit urgently warned him of the imminent threat. The exorcism officers froze in fear, while Chinjua mistakenly thought the head doctor had come to drag him back. With a disgruntled look, he swung the door open, yelling, "Damn doctor, stop bothering me." But outside stood no doctor, only an innocent-looking little girl. However, only the spirit within Chinjua knew that this little girl was far from ordinary. She was, in fact, a vengeful ghost carrying the resentment of 17 lives, a revenant driven by revenge. Chinjua, oblivious to any danger, continued to believe it was all a trick by the head doctor. After what he considered careful analysis, he concluded, since the voice was the doctor's accomplice and it labeled the girl as the enemy, then the enemy of an enemy must be a friend. The little girl held up her worn teddy bear, indicating she wanted Chinjua to play with her. Looking at the raggedy teddy bear, Chinjua wore a disgusted expression. He didn't hide his disdain for the bear, finding it utterly revolting, and promptly threw it far away, causing the little girl to grit her teeth in anger. Unconcerned with her reaction, Chinjua confidently took her hand and boldly led her into the room. He completely ignored the exorcism officers behind him, who were nearly paralyzed with fear, and continued as if nothing was wrong. With full confidence, he said to the little girl, "Come on, kid, let me show you something cool." Casually, he pulled out a music box from his pocket, fortunately not anything stranger. The girl looked at him with disdain, but Chinjua was thoroughly entertained, fully immersed in his own fun. He even suggested they play hide and seek, claiming, Agent 01 has invisibility skills. The little girl looked at him hopping around, unimpressed, and coldly told him she could see him. Chinjua was baffled. He was supposed to be invisible. Reluctantly, he asked the chief and the others if they could see him, and they all looked skyward, pretending not to. The girl walked up to Chief Joigwa, saying casually, "If you're really invisible, why don't you try it?" The chief fainted from fright, while Chenjua scooped up the girl, shouting, "Invisibility, success!" Suddenly, Chenjua noticed the nails on the girl's body and showed great interest. The little girl explained that these were cursed nails sealing her resentment, driven deep into her soul, 5 in total. Chenjua, enraged, pounded his chest, exclaiming, "Which hospital dared to nail you like this? I'll chop them up and feed them to the dogs." The girl replied darkly, "It was my parents, they're already dead." Chenjua was taken aback, then sympathetically said the nails must hurt and offered to pull them out for her. The girl mentioned that they couldn't be removed, but Chenjua, undeterred, felt his determination flare up. There was nothing in this world he couldn't accomplish. Just as the chief was regaining consciousness, he saw Chenjua touching the girl's chest, and he fainted again from sheer shock. He exhausted every effort trying to pull out the nails, but these soul-bound nails were no ordinary objects. They remained unmoved, deeply embedded. Helpless, the spirit finally resorted to using the 5 elements soul-sealing nail removal technique, painstakingly removing each nail bit by bit. With Chenjua and the spirit's combined effort, they finally managed to pull out the heart-gate nail from the girl's chest. As soon as the heart-gate nail was removed, the suppressed resentment within her erupted into a thick cloud of dark energy, transforming her into a vengeful ghost that lunged fiercely at Chenjua. Oblivious to the danger, Chenjua held her hand, continuing to remove the nails in her hands and feet with the spirit's assistance. Then, he set his sights on the nail on the girl's forehead. The spirit hurriedly warned him that this nail was in the celestial Sha position, removing it could lead to severe consequences. But Chenjua didn't understand these celestial taboos and proceeded to pull it out. Left with no choice, the spirit once again used the 5 elements soul-sealing nail removal technique, finally dislodging the nail. With the last celestial seal nail removed, her suppressed spirit burst forth as a powerful vengeful ghost, unleashing a deafening wail as a wave of dark energy shook the entire room to its core. Amid the surge of resentment, the EN energy detector exploded, sparks flying. Chenjua was thrown out the window by the blast, plummeting from several stories up, his life hanging by a thread. At the last second, a faint light streaked through the window like a lifeline. It was the girl, now regaining consciousness, her ghostly form reaching out just in time to grab Chenjua's hand and pull him back to safety. As Chenjua was safely brought back inside, everyone stared in stunned silence. No one could comprehend the scene before them. A ghost, who was supposed to harm humans, had saved Chenjua, a bizarre agent, in the nick of time. For the exorcism officers, it was an unprecedented experience that left them utterly astonished. But just as they thought it was finally over, a crimson streak of light suddenly cut through the darkness, hurtling straight toward Chenjua. Fortunately, the crimson line didn't end his life, it merely left a shallow cut on Chenjua's finger, a faint trace of blood. It turned out that the little vengeful girl was moved by Chenjua's kindness, recalling an old woman's advice. She decided to form a bond with him, allowing her to stay by his side without disrupting his good fortune. To complete this bond, she only needed to offer a drop of concentrated resentment, a ghost contract. But Chenjua, oblivious to the depth of this gesture, dramatically cried out in pain from the minor cut on his finger. Finally, the girl took his hand, using the music box Chenjua had given her as the keepsake to formally seal their pact. In an instant, dark energy flared from her forehead, transforming into a greenish glow that enveloped her, as though she was emerging anew. When the transformation was complete, she appeared gentle and sweet, like the girl next door, with no trace of her former vengeful spirit. But Chenjua seemed unimpressed. Instead of being pleased with his newfound powerful spirit companion, he howled over the tiny wound on his finger. Exasperated, the spirit used some energy to heal him, silencing his complaints. The girl finally turned to face the exorcism officers, who were huddled together, with Chief Joigwa nervously gulping, fearing she might suddenly attack. Unexpectedly, she simply bowed slightly, as the word burn flashed on her forehead, glowing briefly before it turned into black energy and fused into Chenjua's body. The team stared in surprise, relieved that nothing went wrong. The vengeful girl was not only subdued but even seemed to show gratitude. Could this mission be considered overachievement? Absolutely. As the morning sun rose outside, the exorcism bureau was filled with the rare joy of success. Chief Joigwa was moved to tears, hardly believing that this fool had, after dealing with the male and female wraiths, resolved the vengeful girl's anger and even formed a ghost contract with her. To him, Chenjua was practically a savior. Since the resurgence of ghostly energy, ghosts had been classified into 9 ranks, with the exorcism bureau typically handling only first-rank spirits and some second-rank wraiths. Any higher-ranked ghost required reporting to the soul suppression department, a cumbersome process that also required navigating bureaucracy. Now, the Exorcism Bureau finally had its moment of triumph. The next morning, in his office, Joe Igwa lounged with his feet up, brimming with pride and satisfaction. On the phone with the soul suppression department, Joe Igwa, abandoning his usual humble tone, confidently cancelled the request for support and even hung up without hesitation. Freed from having to ask for favors, the satisfaction was immense, all thanks to Chenhua, their newfound guardian deity. Regardless of his mental state, his strength was genuine and formidable. In the office, Chenhua had slept until midday, only waking when the scent of food stirred his hunger. A lunchbox was placed on the coffee table with a note labeled Agent 07. The note read, "Agent 07 has gone on a headquarters mission. Headquarters especially commended Agent 01. These few lines filled Chenhua with excitement. Being recognized by headquarters was the highest honor for a warrior like him. Without further delay, he started on the braised pork rice left by Agent 07, fearing it would get cold if he waited any longer. During the day, the Exorcism Bureau was quiet, with only a few staff members on duty. After last night, Chenhua had warmed up to his uniformed colleagues, even cheerfully pestering a female officer for a drink. The female officer, startled by this mysterious patient, quickly gestured for him to take the cola on her desk, hoping this alien agent wouldn't cause any further mischief. Chenhua was pleased with the exorcism officers, secretly praising them. These weaklings are way easier to talk to than the doctors and nurses at the hospital. Saying this, he casually pulled out a hand-drawn talisman and pressed it into a female officer's hand, seriously proclaiming, "This charm absorbs heavenly energy, ensuring peace for 3 generations." However, this so-called protective charm was merely a sketch of a fish blowing bubbles, leaving the female officer looking puzzled. Her colleague, though, reassured her sincerely, "Don't mind his quirks, Chenhua's charms do seem to work wonders sometimes." It didn't take long before a line formed outside the chief's office. Joe Igwa, puzzled, wondered, "Why are all these people gathered outside my door?" As he got closer, he realized that they were all here for Chenhua. In front of Chenhua lay a pile of snacks, and those in line were still bringing more. The junior officers who hadn't managed to get snacks wore disgruntled expressions, grumbling on the sidelines. This absurd scene was all for one purpose, to ask Chenhua for a protection talisman. Seeing this, Joe Igwa cleared his throat loudly, drawing everyone's attention back. With a stern expression, he drove them all out of the office, scolding, "Hiding something like this from me? Do any of you still respect your chief?" However, after chastising his subordinates, he took out a blank piece of paper and, in a flattering tone, asked Chenhua, Master Chen, could you draw one for me too?" Chenhua glanced at Joe Igwa's empty hands, raised an eyebrow, and remained silent. Catching on quickly, Joe Igwa understood Chenhua's hint. He pulled out a few bills and placed them on the table, and Chenhua's face immediately lit up. This money could buy a ton of snacks at the store. With great seriousness, Chenhua began to draw, and before long, a swimming turtle talisman appeared, with a certain mystique in its delicate strokes. Joe Igwa, satisfied, tucked the talisman away carefully before moving on to the main topic. Joe Igwa explained that the East Bridge had recently been the site of a series of murders, and headquarters had specifically assigned Chenhua to accompany the exorcism officers to assist in the investigation. That night, the East Bridge was brightly lit, yet deserted, with only a single police car parked to the side, as officers escorted the patient Chenhua onto the bridge. Just last night, another murder had taken place here involving a drunk man. The scene was gruesome, with the body mutilated beyond recognition. This was already the 36th mysterious assault case this month, yet the Bureau still couldn't confirm whether the perpetrator was human or ghostly, leaving the case increasingly shrouded in mystery. Joe Igwa sighed and said to Chenhua, "Master Chen, this mission depends entirely on you." But before he could finish, Chenhua stepped across the caution tape and immediately tripped over a stone, falling flat on his face. The surrounding officers grew tense, suspecting some malevolent force at work. However, Joe Igwa knew the truth. Chenhua had simply tripped in an ordinary stumble and even bruised his nose in the process. Holding back tears, Chenhua burst into loud sobs, drawing everyone's attention. Amidst the commotion, the scent of blood in the air thickened, hinting at a looming, ominous presence. Sensing the disturbance more keenly than the others, the spirit immediately summoned the little girl to protect Chenhua. Instantly, a wisp of dark energy emerged from within Chenhua, forming into the familiar shape of the little girl, standing protectively before him. The exorcism officers, seeing her ominous figure, grew wary, recalling the terrifying abilities she had previously displayed. However, an even greater danger was drawing closer, leaving them with nowhere to escape. A massive shape gradually emerged before their eyes. It was a giant tiger, its body engulfed in dark energy, as large as an elephant, its eyes gleaming with murderous intent and radiating a strong killing aura. The officers' faces turned pale, realizing that this tiger spirit was a mid-level ghost, and the spirit within Chenhua judged that the little girl might not be able to defeat it. The tiger's bloodlust had locked onto Chenhua, and the little girl knew she had no choice but to act. She lunged forward to attack, wrapping a strand of dark energy tightly around the tiger's neck, but the overwhelming difference in power made her struggle. The tiger spirit violently shook its massive head, flinging the little girl high into the air, where she vanished into the darkness of the night. The officers finally took in the entire situation, beginning to speculate on the tiger spirit's origin. It turned out this tiger spirit was the ghost of a fugitive tiger that had been killed near this bridge a decade ago, its death steeped in resentment, now manifesting as a vengeful ghost. Now wreaking havoc on the bridge, it was clear the recent mysterious murders were all it's doing. However, even with this knowledge, they were powerless against its wrath. Just as its massive paw was about to strike down, everyone closed their eyes, bracing for impact, but no pain came. They opened their eyes to see the enormous paw halted midair, blocked by a layer of golden light composed of wobbly stars, birds, and random lines. Joe Igwa immediately recognized this as one of Chenhua's protective talismans. He urgently called for everyone to pull out their own charms, exclaiming incredulously, "These drawings by a madman actually work." The officers, as if grasping a lifeline, all held up their talismans, rekindling their courage to resist the tiger spirit. The tiger spirit, blocked by the golden light, couldn't advance even a step, though it was unharmed. Seeing this, the officers' morale surged, and as the golden light grew brighter, the tiger spirit seemed to waver, showing signs of retreat. As the standoff continued, a hand reached out from between the officers. It extended toward the tiger's forehead, and with a loud pop, Chenhua unexpectedly flicked the tiger on the forehead. This startled not only the tiger but also Joe Igwa and the officers, who nearly lost control from shock. Joe Igwa stammered, "Even with protection, you can't just act recklessly like that." Sure enough, the tiger spirit was completely enraged, roaring so loudly that the bridge trembled, and the golden shield began to crack. While the talismans were powerful, the officers were too weak to sustain them against the tiger's fierce attacks. As the golden shield began to shatter, fear drove them to turn and flee. At that moment, Chenhua, separated from the group, was left isolated, becoming the tiger spirit's target. Without the golden shield's barrier, he was practically a ready meal in the eyes of the tiger. Just as the tiger spirit opened its massive jaws, revealing rows of jagged teeth, a familiar wisp of dark energy swiftly appeared, once again latching onto its left paw. The little girl shouted proudly, "You're not allowed to eat my master." She used all her strength, fiercely yanking the tiger spirit and flipping it over. Strangely, it toppled in the exact direction of the fleeing officers. It turned out the girl, determined to protect her master, had deliberately hurled the tiger toward the officers, leaving them to watch in horror as the massive ghostly figure bore down on them. The tiger spirit, dazed from the impact, temporarily lost its sense of direction, creating a golden opportunity for Chenhua's impulsive heroics. This was the first time Chenhua had ever seen such a giant kitty, and he eagerly stepped forward, plucking a tuft of its fur as if claiming a prize. The tiger's leg alone was thicker than Chenhua's waist. This brazen act of provocation enraged it, and it lunged at him, claws bared. Realizing the imminent danger, Chenhua instinctively dodged, his eyes gleaming with an eager look, ready for action. With the spirit's full support, Chenhua unleashed a powerful meteor fawn punch. The blow, heavy as a 1,000-pound hammer, sent the ancient tiger spirit flying several meters, landing with a resounding crash. The tiger, now thoroughly disoriented, lay sprawled on the ground, struggling to regain its footing. However, Chenhua's assault had only just begun. With both fists swinging in tandem, he shouted, "Return my kitty punch," landing blow after blow on the tiger spirit. On East Bridge, the tiger's agonized howls echoed through the night, chilling anyone who heard it to the bone. The onlookers were stunned, not because the tiger didn't resist, but because Chenhua's relentless punches left it no room to fight back, thoroughly suppressing the beast. Before long, the 1,000-year-old tiger spirit lay on the ground like a defeated stray, its once steel-piercing claws now weakly shielding its head. It even raised its other paw in a white flag gesture, signaling complete surrender. Chenhua excitedly jumped onto the tiger's head, proudly exclaiming, "I've tamed you, big kitty." He even shouted for the little girl to join him for a ride around. Helpless, the tiger spirit could only stagger under Chenhua's weight, slowly flying off into the distance, gradually picking up speed as it recovered. The officers on the bridge watched Chenhua's figure fade into the distance, each of them utterly speechless. Especially Joigwa, who couldn't help but feel alarmed losing this great deity would make it difficult to face the hospital director. Up in the sky, Chenjue was having a blast, directing the tiger spirit to fly in random directions. Though reluctant, the tiger spirit dared not disobey. After some time, a blue streak of light shot straight toward Qingshan Hospital. It turned out that an exhausted Chenjue had subconsciously returned to the place he considered home. The tiger spirit, hoping to slip away as Chenjue landed, was caught off guard as Chenjue seized it. "You can't just let pets run free, you've got to keep them leashed," Chenjue said seriously, miming a leash around the tiger's neck as he triumphantly led it into the hospital. The tiger spirit, resigned to its fate, cooperated with his invisible leash act, even pretending to jingle an imaginary bell. Finally, Chenjue patted the tiger's head earnestly and said, "From now on, this is your home. With Agent 01 of the planetary warriors around, no one will dare to bully you." Satisfied, he patted the tiger again and, wearing a pleased smile, headed to his room to get some sleep. The tiger spirit sighed with relief as Chenjue finally left, thinking to itself, "As long as that troublemaker isn't here, I can finally be free." But just as it was about to take off, an invisible force yanked it back, as if it were really tethered by a rope. The tiger spirit looked around in confusion, only to realize that Chenjue's spirit had secretly cast the soul-binding rope, securing it tightly. There would be no escape this time. The next morning, Chenjue was awakened by a nurse's surprised exclamation. She said, "Weren't you supposed to be at the police station? How did you come back so quietly? And why is your hand injured?" The nurse's genuine concern made Chenjue feel warm inside, and with tears in his eyes, he asked her for a comforting hug. Upon learning of Chenjue's return, the director was furious, immediately calling the police station to scold them, saying, "This is ridiculous. How could a psychiatric patient go missing right under your noses?" Joigwa, feeling guilty, didn't dare argue and silently endured the reprimand. Meanwhile, downstairs, Chenjue was happily humming a tune, enjoying a drink, completely ignoring the voice in his head. The spirit, on the other hand, was secretly hoping to take this chance to cure Chenjue's mental issues. However, treating him required his cooperation, and Chenjue clearly had no intention of cooperating. Thus, the spirit's 43rd attempt at treatment failed once again. Just then, a black car slowly pulled up at the hospital entrance, and out stepped Officer Zhang Yuyu, who had previously left in frustration after dealing with Chenjue. This time, she had come specifically to apologize to Chenjue for the earlier misunderstanding. As soon as she removed her sunglasses, Chenjue immediately recognized her, excitedly shouting, "Hey, it's you, little chest. I went looking for you at your work, but I couldn't find you." Zhang Yuyu paused briefly, then smiled bitterly and lowered her head. In truth, she had just come from the hospital. Just as Chenjue had sensed, she had indeed been diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was already in the late stages. She apologized to Chenjue with regret, but he nonchalantly replied, "It's okay, it's no big deal. From now on, we're friends." With that, Chenjue extended his hand, a pure and encouraging smile lighting up his face. Looking at his innocent smile, Zhang Yuyu could no longer hold back her tears, which began to stream down her cheeks. The doctor had already made it clear that she didn't have much time left. Yet, she didn't want to die, there were still so many things she wanted to accomplish. She deeply loved her work at the bureau, wanting to protect the innocent in a world plagued by vengeful spirits, but reality always seemed to place her as the one being protected. Seeing her tears, Chenjue looked a bit puzzled. He patted her shoulder gently and said earnestly, "If you don't want to die, then just don't. This kind of thing is nothing in the eyes of Agent 01, he continued, shaking a water bottle with great seriousness, muttering some mystical incantations as if performing a ritual. In truth, it was Chenjue's spirit who was truly intervening. With Chenjue's ritual, the spirit silently activated the Guiyin acupuncture technique, aiming to help ease the accumulation of dark energy in Zhang Yuyu's body and slow her illness's progress. Chenjue handed her the bottle with utmost confidence, saying solemnly, "Drink this, and I promise you'll be as fit as a fiddle and enjoy every bite." Zhang Yuyu accepted the bottle hesitantly, lifting it slowly to her lips. Just as it neared her mouth, she caught a glimpse of a fleeting red glow, which vanished as quickly as it appeared. She thought to herself that at worst, it was just regular water and drank it in one gulp. However, as soon as the water entered her throat, it felt as though some force gripped her, making her choke and tear up. There was sand in the water. Seeing her tears, Chenjue assumed she was moved to tears, and a swell of pride filled him as he thought, "Indeed, I, Agent 01, am destined to be a hero who lights up others' lives." Zhang Yuyu wiped her eyes, feeling a mix of emotions. While she had heard of Chenjua's miraculous tales, she knew that healing wasn't exactly his forte. This bottle of sandy water, she figured, was just a desperate attempt in the face of her illness. With a complex mix of feelings, Zhang Yuyu turned to leave, only to run into Chief Zhou Aigua, who had come to visit Chenjua, in the corridor. Zhou Aigua, already aware of Zhang Yuyu's situation, saw her hesitation and said directly, "I won't approve your resignation." Zhang Yuyu had submitted her resignation due to her illness, but Zhou Aigua knew her passion for the job and understood that being an exorcism officer meant facing evil spirits head-on. Although she wasn't the most outstanding officer in the bureau, her enthusiasm and hard work were evident to everyone. Zhou Aigua looked at her with determination, saying, "We've seen everything you've done for the bureau. In times like these, the bureau will never give up on you so easily." He reaffirmed that he would not approve her resignation and promised to treat this period as a long vacation, with all expenses covered by the bureau. After speaking, he stood at attention and solemnly declared, "This is the bureau's commitment and support for Officer Zhang Yuyu." Hearing this, Zhang Yuyu was moved to tears, her nose running uncontrollably, and she could only bow deeply in gratitude. Meanwhile, back at the psychiatric hospital, Chenjua was still basking in his heroic self-appreciation, until Zhou Aigua approached, holding a small box. Inside was a new phone. To ensure constant contact, Zhou Aigua had told Chenjua it was a planetary signal receiver, and entrusted it to him. The last time Chenjua disappeared nearly drove Director Li Qingshan mad, and another such incident would be a real disaster. On his way back, Zhou Aigua was utterly exhausted. Due to the surge in spirit-related incidents, regular missing persons cases were piling up at the station, with even teachers coming in to urge action. Shaking his head, he sighed, reluctant to take on these troublesome cases. Just then, his phone rang. Thinking it was an emergency, he found instead a series of random questions and photos from Chenjua, who had just learned to text. Zhou Aigua groaned, holding his phone with a headache, regretting ever introducing Chenjua to modern technology. That night, a restless Chenjua lay wide awake, unable to sleep, and decided to sneak out for some fun. With the help of the little Reaper girl, he slid down her hair to the ground and quickly leaped onto the white tiger, smoothly making his way out, feeling quite pleased with himself. He had originally just wanted to wander around casually, but the little girl was the first to notice something strange nearby. She whispered, "Something's up," and Chenjua immediately instructed the white tiger to find a hidden spot to lie low. Shortly after, a thin, scruffy man appeared within sight, carrying an unconscious girl on his shoulder, walking directly toward them with a gloomy expression. Chenjua leaned half of his body out to observe, but strangely, the man didn't react at all to his presence, simply walking straight past him as if he couldn't see him. Just as Chenjua muttered complaints about the stupid cat for being too slow, the little girl calmly analyzed, "What's strange isn't that he's carrying a girl, it's his life flame. Why is it so weak, even fainter than someone on the brink of death?" The life flame refers to the flame of life on a person's shoulders and forehead, representing their vitality. As a ghost, the little girl naturally had no life flame, while Chenjua, being a regular person, couldn't normally see it. The spirit conveniently activated the yin-yang eye for him, and sure enough, Chenjua's gaze was instantly fixed on the faint flame, captivated. The little girl urged, "If we don't follow him now, he'll get away." Chenjua snapped out of his daze, patting the white tiger and quickly following with the little ghost girl. In the quiet of the night, Chenjua trailed the thin man into a dark, narrow alley. The man eventually stopped in front of an old courtyard. With a creak, the courtyard gates slowly opened. Chenjua immediately called for the white tiger to follow, but he was a step too late. The gate slammed shut, leaving him outside. Inside the courtyard, the man walked toward the main house, and with each step he took, 3 eerie green lights emerged ahead of him. One of the lights rasped, "So, what are you betting on this time?" The man replied expressionlessly, "Same old rules, betting my life. Plus, this girl's life." His words made the ghostly figures in the 3 green lights smile greedily. The dim lights in the room gradually brightened, and the scattered mahjong tiles on the table showed that this wasn't the first time this gamble had begun. Meanwhile, the girl on the ground finally regained consciousness, staring in terror at the group of ghostly figures around her, though her bound hands and feet prevented her from moving. Candles were lit one by one on the altar, and in the flickering shadows, the ghostly figures' shapes became clearer. One female ghost, sneering, seemed to chastise the man for his cruelty, though her eyes gleamed with excitement. Hearing the ghosts openly discussing their transaction, the girl felt despair welling up inside her. Outside, Chenjua rubbed his nose, which had been bumped by the door, feeling a faint pain. The spirit cautioned him to be careful, as the three ghosts inside were clearly not friendly. However, instead of being deterred, Shenjua's curiosity grew stronger, and with a slap, he sent the spirit flying. Since the front door wouldn't work, he decided to scale the wall on the white tiger's back. He cautiously crept to the window, pressing his head against the crack with the other two, peeking into the room. However, all his sneaky movements were fully seen by the female ghost. Inside, the game continued, with the three ghosts playing effortlessly while the man kept losing, his face lined with worry. Finally, the game reached its critical point. Clutching his tile tightly, the man knew the outcome was decided. As expected, he lost another round, now so weak he could barely stand, with his three life flames flickering faintly, almost extinguished. Outside, Shenjua, who had dozed off briefly, rubbed the back of his head, bleary-eyed and unsure of what had transpired during his nap. At that moment, a gentle but chilling voice sounded from behind him. "Hey there, since you're here, why not come inside and take a look?" He quickly turned around, finding a female ghost in a cheapao standing silently behind him, a strange smile on her face. Any ordinary person would have screamed in terror, but Shenjua felt neither fear nor alarm. Instead, he felt a bit embarrassed at being caught sneaking into someone else's courtyard. The ghost's invitation made even the little ghost girl tense up, yet Shenjua, without a second thought, eagerly stepped forward, ready to experience this thrilling game. As he took his first step into the room, he suddenly felt something sharp brush against his foot. Looking down, he saw an elderly woman lying on the floor, her presence seemingly appearing out of nowhere. Shenjua, puzzled, couldn't understand when she had arrived, but it didn't stop the old woman from being included in the game. The female ghost in the cheapao explained slowly, "The stakes can be lives or other things. If you win, we'll grant any wish you desire, wealth, fame, or power." Smiling darkly, she added, "But if you lose, both you and this woman on the ground will become our offerings." In his mind, the spirit's voice sounded, warning him not to agree recklessly. But Shenjua, unfazed, became even more excited and proposed his own rules. "Fine, let's gamble, but we're playing Draw the Turtle." The three ghosts looked puzzled, unable to understand how a turtle had anything to do with gambling. Shenjua explained, "In Draw the Turtle, you remove the joker and the 3/8 from a deck, then take turns drawing from the person next to you to form pairs, which you can then discard. Whoever is left with the turtle card at the end loses." The rules were straightforward, but to the three ghosts, it seemed both silly and intriguing. And so, the game began, with the three ghosts determined to teach a lesson to this cocky young man. However, at the start, Shenjua was unlucky, holding the turtle card in his hand. The male ghost, attempting to cheat with his X-ray vision, found himself unable to see through Shenjua's cards at all. This was because the spirit had already anticipated the move and secretly cast a spell to shield Shenjua's cards from view. Seeing this, the male ghost quickly relayed the anomaly to his companions. The dwarf ghost and the female ghost in the cheapao exchanged a glance and began scrutinizing Shenjua's card skills. As the game heated up, the number of cards in each hand dwindled, bringing the tension to a boiling point. When it was Shenjua's turn, he deliberately reached toward the card to the right of the female ghost in the cheapao, which he had eagerly hoped he would draw. It was the final king. The ghost smiled smugly, anticipating the win. However, at the moment Shenjua drew the card, the spirit subtly cast a spell, transforming the card into a 3. With a confident gesture, Shenjua slapped a pair of 3s onto the table, reversing the game and claiming victory for the night. The female ghost couldn't believe her eyes. She had clearly ensured that Shenjua had drawn the king, so how had it turned into a 3? Enraged, dark energy surged around her, half her face revealing decayed spots and showing her corpse-like appearance after death. The three ghosts exchanged looks, each revealing their true form, realizing that this uninvited guest was here to ruin their plans. Suddenly, the candles in the room extinguished, the doors slammed shut, and an icy aura began closing in. The three ghosts, brimming with malice, advanced on Shenjua step by step. Sensing danger, the spirit grew tense, but Shenjua still hadn't realized the gravity of the situation. He thought the wind had blown the door shut and casually pushed it, inadvertently knocking both doors clean off their hinges. Embarrassed, he looked at the three ghosts, apologizing repeatedly, "Sorry, I didn't mean to break your doors." But the ghosts, unconcerned with his apology, only grew angrier, determined to give this meddling guy a lesson. Seeing the imminent danger, the spirit immediately summoned the little ghost girl and the white tiger spirit to come to their aid. In an instant, the little ghost girl and the white tiger spirit made a grand appearance, standing imposingly on either side of Shenjua, emanating a strong, cold aura that changed the atmosphere of the entire room. The three ghosts showed signs of fear, their bodies trembling slightly as they realized that this madman was far from ordinary. They had already heard of the white tiger spirit on the East Bridge and had nearly become its prey once before. Now, seeing it again sent shivers down their spines. However, Chenzhuo ignored their fear completely and turned to scold the white tiger, saying, "Why did you barge in so recklessly? You made me break their door. That's so embarrassing." To show his apology, he reluctantly dug into his snack bag and pulled out a few less tasty snacks as a peace offering. Though dissatisfied with Chenjua's apology, the three ghosts held back their frustration, knowing that this simple young man possessed undeniable power. Chenjua mistakenly took this as a sign of their generosity and good nature. In high spirits, he even took out his phone, enthusiastically suggesting a group photo with the three ghosts. The ghosts, albeit unwillingly, forced themselves to cooperate, finally putting an end to the bizarre charade. Meanwhile, Chief Joigwa was overwhelmed by a pile of challenging cases. Just as he was about to delegate some work to his colleagues, he noticed Chenjua's latest social media post. In the photo, Chenjua's smiling face dominated the frame, but in the corner, three ominous figures were faintly visible. Joigwa looked closer and immediately sensed that something was wrong. Those figures were none other than the three ghosts of death, ranked third on the most wanted list of dangerous spirits. Startled, he almost dropped his phone, instantly sounding the alarm to mobilize all officers for an emergency ghost hunting operation. At the same time, Chenjua was still basking in the triumph of his victory at the card game, feeling increasingly smug. Meanwhile, the three ghosts' bodies were showing signs of deterioration, a consequence of their dwindling power, indicating that their energy was nearly depleted. Realizing this, the ghosts' expressions took on an eerie quality. It was clear they wanted to prevent things from worsening any further. The spirit sensed danger immediately, trying to stop Chenjua, but it was already too late. Just as Chenjua's hand touched a card, the small room vanished, replaced by an entirely new scene, and the time shifted from night to daylight. The three ghosts used a spectral domain to trap Chenjua within memories of their past lives, hoping to confine him forever in this illusory world. A noisy clamor echoed nearby, and, curious, Chenjua followed the sound, ignoring the spirit's warnings. He found a narrow alley crowded with people watching some sort of dispute. Approaching, he saw a short, bald dwarf being mocked and ridiculed by the crowd, one who looked identical to one of the three ghosts. Witnessing this scene, Chenjua seemed to be driven by some divine force, energetically leaping into the crowd, chanting and waving his hands, as if performing some sort of holy ritual to disperse the onlookers. Then, he took the dwarf's hand and said cheerfully, "Come on, let's go play cards." Chenjua's playful enthusiasm moved the dwarf deeply, as no one had ever shown him such kindness. In life, the dwarf, known as Gopatsi, had suffered relentless bullying, which filled him with a deep grudge against humanity. Had Chenjua joined in the crowd's mockery, he would have faced a backlash from the ghost's resentment. Overwhelmed by this unprecedented warmth, Gopatsi released Chenjua's hand, feeling a pang of guilt. He opened a dimensional passageway to the next level, saying, "Go ahead, they're waiting for you." The scene shifted once again, revealing a new setting. A lady in a chipa was leisurely enjoying an opera performance. After the performance, she poured hot tea, gazing intently at the actor on stage, her eyes filled with unmistakable affection, clearly more than mere admiration for the performance. Just then, a loud banging on the door echoed from outside, followed by a man in a military uniform barging in with his soldiers. He was the commander of the military district and also the lady's husband. Furious, the man, feeling deeply humiliated, slapped the woman harshly without a word. He then kicked the actor in a vulnerable spot and ordered his soldiers to arrest the shameless pair. The lady, shaken by the blow, was protected by Zhang Changshun, who bravely stepped in front of her. The commander, enraged, pulled out his pistol, pointing it at Zhang Changshun with a menacing look. "So, you want to die? Then let's send you to the afterlife together as a pair of lovebirds." Just as the gun was pressed to Zhang Changshun's forehead, Chenjua rushed forward and delivered a powerful Shaolin iron head move, knocking the commander several feet back. The impact was so forceful that a few of the commander's aged bones audibly cracked, leaving him momentarily stunned. The guards, taken by surprise, hesitated, as Chenjua yelled, "Listen up, you wimp! I'm counting to 3, let go of my card, buddy." The sight left the commander and his soldiers dumbfounded. Who was this reckless young man daring to challenge the military leader? Snapping back to reality, the commander ordered his soldiers to restrain the madman at once. Chenjua's bravery inspired Zhao Xiaocui. If an outsider was willing to stand up for her, how could she continue to hide? Resolute, Zhao Xiaocui decided to defy the commander and stay openly with Zhang Changshun. Filled with righteous fury, Zhang Changshun grabbed his spear tightly, vowing to kill the commander and free Zhao Xiaocui from humiliation so she could be his rightful wife. The opera house became his battleground, the verses on stage transforming into his battle chants. Each move of his spear was fierce and deadly, and he stood proudly like a true hero from the stories. Chenjue watched in awe, realizing for the first time that his card-playing friend possessed such heroic and admirable courage. However, the spirit sensed a lingering unease. While Chenjue's presence had indeed shifted the course of events, it seemed unlikely to alter their fated end. Under Zhang Changshuan's fierce spear techniques, the commander's soldiers were forced to retreat one by one, unable to withstand his attacks. Just as Zhang Changshuan's move, Dragon Spear, was about to strike the commander's head, a soldier crept up from behind, suddenly slashing Zhang Changshuan's throat. Blood splattered, and Zhang Changshuan's head rolled to Chenjue's feet. Zhao Xiaotsui let out a heart-wrenching scream, but her fury could not change the cruel reality. That night, Chenjue and Zhao Xiaotsui were bound tightly, awaiting the inevitable death that loomed ahead. Zhao Xiaotsui, filled with guilt, apologized to Chenjue. She was resigned to die alongside Zhang Changshan but never expected to drag an innocent Chenjue into this tragedy. With a sigh, she lamented the cruelty of fate, saying, "We endured so much hardship, yet were seen by the world as villains." The crowd, unaware of the truth, hurled insults at them and, heartlessly, set fire to the ill-fated couple. As the flames rose, Zhao Xiaotsui's eyes filled with tears, but Chenjue's expression changed abruptly, anger boiling up inside him. The crowd's endless insults and accusations pricked at his nerves like thorns. Reaching his limit, he broke free from his restraints. He roared, "Zhao Xiaotsui did nothing wrong. Zhang Changshan did nothing wrong. The only fools here are you, who don't understand a thing." Seeing this, the spirit instantly boosted Chenjue's strength. Like a mighty warrior, he uprooted the wooden stake in a move reminiscent of Lu Zhishan's uprooting the willow. Filled with rage, he swung the stake at the crowd, taking out everything in his path. Soon, the entire street was engulfed in flames. Zhao Xiaotsui, witnessing it all, wept tears of gratitude, feeling deeply touched not only by Chenjue's help but by his understanding of her and Zhang Changshan. As the flames gradually subsided, the eerie illusion faded. 3 souls rose slowly into the sky, bowing to Chenjue in gratitude. "If only someone had been as righteous and fearless as you back then, our fates might have been different." However, Chenjue didn't grasp the deeper meaning behind the 3 ghosts' plight. To him, everything was straightforward. If someone insults you, you insult back. If someone hits you, you hit back. That's what he considered fair. As the card game ended, Chenjue, still feeling thrilled, wouldn't let the 3 ghosts leave, insisting on continuing the game. Despite the spirit's support as a cheat, the 3 ghosts' powers were nearly exhausted, leaving them drained and vulnerable. Just as Chenjue was basking in his winning streak at the table, Zhou Aigua finally arrived with the exorcism officers at the gate of the small courtyard. They quickly surrounded the courtyard, and at Zhou Aigua's command, everyone charged inside, ready for action. However, as they opened the door, they were all stunned by the scene inside. Chenjue sat casually at the table, completely unbothered, as if he were enjoying an afternoon tea. Seeing familiar faces, Chenjue greeted them with a big smile, saying, "Oh, perfect timing. Want to join us for a few rounds?" Everyone was utterly speechless, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. At that moment, the 3 ghosts behind Chenjue froze for a second but then, as if shocked by an electric current, leapt up and charged directly at Zhou Aigua. Startled, the officers tightened their grips on their weapons, fearing the ghosts were about to attack. To everyone's surprise, the 3 ghosts instead knelt down in unison, gazing at Zhou Aigua with pleading eyes. Seeing him felt like a lifeline. If they kept playing with this lunatic, their very spirits would be in jeopardy. Just as Zhou Aigua looked on in confusion, Officer Kaka's detector emitted a signal, showing that the 3 former vengeful spirits had been downgraded to wandering souls, their power almost entirely depleted. Chenjue shrugged innocently, saying, "What can I say? It's not my fault you all have such terrible luck at cards." The girl nearby, seeing her rescuers finally arrive, sighed in relief, struggling to crawl toward the door. Only then did Zhou Aigua notice there was a hostage in the room. After Kaka's confirmation, the group realized that the girl was none other than the long-missing heiress of the Wu family, a real estate tycoon. They had not only solved a vengeful spirit case but also unexpectedly cracked a major missing persons case. Everyone was in high spirits, especially Zhou Aigua, who couldn't help but feel a bit smug about the unexpected success. On the way back, the 3 ghosts repeatedly swore to turn over a new leaf and promised never to harm anyone again, fearing they might encounter another unstoppable card player like Chenjue. Just as the atmosphere lightened, a light rain began to fall, and with the cards now out of play, Chenjue decided it was time to go back to sleep. Zhou Aigua was about to drive Chenjue home, but Chenjue waved him off, calling for the tiger spirit instead. Forget it, ding ding 7. My big cat here is way faster than your old car. At that moment, Kaka's face turned pale as his detector emitted a sharp alarm from their recent brush. Shocked, he discovered that the readings for both the little girl and the tiger spirit showed vengeful spirit levels, one at mid-level and the other at high level. For a moment, they froze, unsure whether to feel thrilled or terrified. Their complex emotions were written all over their faces.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.